Hello, my dears. Welcome back to the Responsel. Today, I want to cover ego death. It's a hard one. Most experiences with ego death start with something jarring, so yeah, it's not the most relaxing topic. So, my story, my personal one with this one is so um, education wise, I was a mad scientist, right? I got a bachelor's in biology and chemistry. Um, I ended up becoming a medical technologist at a hospital. Built myself up to a laboratory manager position. I thought it was a good move. Career wise, it made sense. Um, I thought I was doing good work by being in the medical field, right? Um, there was a lot of problems. I don't want to get too far into it, but the short of it is I ended up getting into it with the CEO. Um, and I knew the medical field was a business. I was not naive in that, but we had a full blown conversation where I said, basically, we were changing policies to where we knew someone was going to die. Okay. I had talked to the doctors. I had talked to the head of the nursing departments. I had talked to because this was a very small hospital. Keep in mind, that's what's called a critical access hospital, also called bandage hospitals. They're in the middle of the country. The whole point of them is that they slap a bandage on the situation so they can get to the real hospital and get taken care of. So I talked to other critical access hospitals and said, okay, this is the situation. I can't let this happen. What can I do? And what it came down to is everything was legal and there was nothing I could do. And so the only thing I could do was to put in my notice and politely walk away. Like it was a lot of money, but I couldn't. I just couldn't. I remember staring. Was in my office, made out the notice of leave, and it really hurt my identity of what a healer was. Um, like consciously, I knew it was a business. Like technically, looking at the numbers and everything, it made kind of sense what he was doing, but it was crossing a line, and I made the decision that this is what I want. I don't care what the money is. It's not what I want. Um, Leaving that, it hurt my identity. Um, I went from pretty much a passive mindset to almost an aggressive place where I was bitter and, in gaming, you trash talk just playfully. Well, I took it to a very mean place. And I would cut someone down, like, proactively. Like, if I felt any kind of aggression, I would cut them down. Like, it was very not me. But the problem with going to aggressive space is I felt safe. Emotionally, I felt safe, and it's sadly it works. I was very good at it. It was not good. Um, the healthcare system has problems. I don't think anybody's going to argue that. But revolutionizing the system wasn't going to help me at the time. Um, so I needed to answer, what is my identity if the one I built for so many years wasn't there anymore? Um, Identity is a combination of just your personality, your values, your places in society. Um, Spirituality at the time was kind of a sideline for me. Technically, writing was also a sideline for me. Um, and my goal at the time was being a scientist, being a healer, doing good at my job. Like, this hospital had problems. It had a lot of problems. I would stay. They actually had a room for me. I would go and sleep. Um, and just stay over the night trying to get everything like organized because the previous lab manager hadn't touched any of the stuff that needed updating in years. So I was playing catch up. So I had devoted so much time and effort to this. Went into a full throttle and it killed me. I began questioning my whole life, schooling, everything. So because I was so stuck, I eventually led into some deeper spiritual practices. And I went into ego death. Ego death has many definitions. The short of it is that you learn that you are small, that my ego isn't all that matters, right? That my personal desires are small in the grandeur of the vast divineness, right? My experience with ego death actually terrified me. So I was already in this really sensitive, like, place, right? I became a librarian, by the way, so it actually wasn't too bad. I did like that. But when I was doing all this spiritual searching stuff, I ended up going into what's called a spontaneous spiritual awakening, which was this. The best way I can describe it is I was suddenly standing in like a giant's palm, and the giant was looking at me, and not like in my direction, like at me, like it was looking at me, not in a malicious way, but it's just in an overwhelming. The presence of it was just so immense. Oh, it scared the crap out of me. I didn't know what was going on. I donated all of my spirituality books, and I just lost myself into a computer game for 6 months. I was so terrified. I found out afterwards that this is actually a very normal thing. Some spiritual awakened stuff can be calm, but some of it can be intense and terrifying. That was mine. Actually, all of my spiritual awakening stuff seems to be intense and terrifying, for some reason. And none of the books I had read at the time talked about this, so it was even more jarring. Like, what the hell is this? So, after this, I mean, my unconscious was trying to unravel what I was dealing with. And so after it calmed down, I began studying like ego death and things like that. The best way I can explain it, you know, the movie Groundhog's Day. That's probably the best representation of what ego death to me is. When he repeats everyday cycles, that at first he tries to manipulate it. You know, he go gets all the money and all that stuff, and then he tries to control it. Right? He tries to commit suicide, the death, and then finally he accepts it. He finally surrenders. That is ego death. It's the surrender. It's the authentic self. It's you're not a new person. You're not creating a new character. Okay. You stop pretending to be someone and accept the darkness part of you, and become a whole person is a large part of it. There's a goal in the surrendering process, that to the surrender to the dark side where you embrace it. So Carl Jung, it was a old dead dude, philosophy guy, right? Calls it the shadow self, and calls working on it shadow work. Okay. This includes things like sexuality, anger, selfishness. Actually, working on selfishness is good because that leads to assertive boundaries, which is part of being self-loyal. Okay. You need to be good. to yourself. So, if you are in a process of an identity crisis, it may feel like you're falling apart. Okay. I'm sorry you're dealing with that because it stings like hell. Um, trust the process, as they say. What eventually comes out is your honest self, and it'll be worth it. Okay. Um, good luck. I'm sorry, but if any of you are experiencing this, which I know a lot of people, I talked to all sorts of people about this. I would like to know in the comments. Um, yeah, let me know. Bye.